If you want to tell a good science fiction story, there are all sorts of different speed bumps you can pile on your way to make this more difficult for yourself. Maybe you want to make a world that really looks like it might exist at some point in time. But also you don't want it to look like it was made in a specific year, like every 90s movie that tried to invent the far future internet. But that you could watch it decades later and couldn't tell when it was made. Now not only do the visuals need to age gracefully, the themes and ideas also need to stay relevant through the decades. And what if you want your story to really be about this world you created, but still have a clear ending? At no point will the logic of the world building be compromised to better suit the message. Now you have really piled the odds against yourself. Your ambition has created something that's just waiting to crumble down ungloriously. You are now trying to win a game of Jenga while playing with a leaf blower. There is a reason why there are about 50 brides to every children of men. With that said, Gattaca is a near perfect story. Roll the intro. 1997 directorial debut of writer-director Andrew Niccol is an anomaly that really shouldn't exist, not if you think of it from a financial point of view. For this man's first story, it have way too big of a budget and looks too polished to be this almost an art house film with no reason for anyone to go see it on a big screen, thus making the creation of any sort of profit practically impossible. Why is this? Well, let's set the scene as I try to cram what the world of Gattaca is like. It's a non-specified year in the not-too-distant future. Our hero, Ethan Hawke, I'm just going to use actor names, it'll be easier, is born through an archaic and banal act that will doom his future dreams. His parents have sex.
Attention deficit disorder, 89% probability. Heart disorder, 99% probability. Early fatal potential. Life expectancy, 30.2 years.
Non-modified babies are useless, so they learn from their mistakes when it's time to breed again.
I have taken the liberty of eradicating any potentially prejudicial conditions. Premature baldness, myopia, alcoholism and addictive susceptibility, propensity for violence, obesity.
The conception of the second son is executed normally. Ethan's brother is born with only the good genes of his parents, thus his possibilities in life are much more open than the genetically inferior older brother. When young Ethan dreams of his future involving space exploration, his parents are quite blunt with their honesty.
The only way that you'll see the inside of a spaceship is if you were cleaning it.
He gets encouraged after winning a swimming challenge against his brother for the first time ever, and leaves. This youthful determination grown from spite can only get you so far. In this world where all meaningful jobs go to those whose genes were planned from birth, godchilds, as they are known, can contribute to society by cleaning the toilets.
I'll never understand what possessed my mother to put her faith in God's hands rather than those of her local geneticist.
He's basically a son of an anti-vaccine mother. But the expiration date of his dreams isn't due yet. He's introduced to Jude Law, a prime specimen of genetic engineering.
An expiration date you wouldn't believe.
The guy's practically gonna live forever. He's got an IQ off the register. Better than 20/20 in both eyes.
Jude has been paralyzed, but he has kept this a secret. Ethan can take his identity. By collecting Jude's blood and urine, he can fool the future space city of Gattaca to hire him to become an astronaut. His crippled partner in crime can save his own face instead of being remembered as a failure if Ethan manages to get in space. As he reaches the job interview for becoming a member of a manned mission to Titan, we see how obsessed this world is when it comes to genetic predetermination.
Congratulations.
Well, what about the interview?
That was it.
I got it.
Of course you got it.
Everything proceeds according to the plan until there's only a week left till the launch. A murder in Gattaca. This is where the story begins. We are more than half an hour into the movie. Until now, everything has been a flashback, mere establishing of the setting. I don't know if this is something that could have been executed better, but we now have established the main questions that we want the story to deliver answers for. Who was the murderer? And why? Will the investigation reveal the invalid astronaut? Will Ethan Hawke get to space? Is there a reason to film a sex scene upside down? Is this world really as perfect of a place as it seems? How will Jude Law come to terms with the burden of his unfulfilled potential? Well, only one of those questions bears any weight. The actual plot is told rather quickly. The two murder investigators find Ethan's hair. One of them is Ethan's brother, who recognizes his picture instantly but doesn't tell this to his colleague. Ethan gets romantically involved with Uma Thurman. We find out that some genetically valid individuals aren't as flawless as we thought. Ethan confronts his brother, who then goes to capture the murderer, and Ethan goes to space. The end. Well, that was quick. This is why it's so mind-boggling that this movie was financed. Can you picture what it's like to pitch this to a producer? Can I get almost $40 million 90s for a sci-fi movie that doesn't have action, antagonist, or characters that we'd have any true reason to like? There's barely even a conflict. And it's going to be written and directed by a guy who has done nothing before this. Now let's convince someone rich that this investment is a fine idea and everyone will watch it. This is the late 90s. Even in the 80s you could still negotiate this in a boardroom where cocaine bucket circles around during the meeting. My guess is that the pitch meeting was something like the following.
What the hell's everybody doing in my apartment?
We having a gangbang?
Oh my god.
And it worked. Danny DeVito really did give his money for this film. You didn't know you could like the man more, but there you go. So now I've given you the condensed version of the setting and the story. But what's the world of Gattaca really like? What sinister horrors lie beneath this facade of flawlessness that's hidden from our eyes beneath this noir Apple Store look? Nothing really.
Everybody gets a pony and a blowjob.
It's true. Everything is fine. And that's the weirdest thing. Every time there's a class divide in any fiction, there tends to be some made-up reason for this, so it can be fixed during the narrative. Snowpiercer is a fine recent example. This train has the last remaining humans in it. It's also a perpetual motion machine. The last carriage has poor people in it. They are oppressed by the rich. Those in the wealthy part of the train can just keep on partying, while the poor have to eat bugs and each other to survive. The rich are here because they bought themselves in. With what? Money? In District 9, aliens arrive to Earth, but when humans can't instantly profit from this, they put the aliens to slums and treat them like trash. Really, people? Have you thought this through? What happens if more arrive? Do you think they'll be friendly then?
They don't belong here.
They're spending so much money to keep them here.
They must just go. I don't know where they go. And they must just go.
Does this not remind you of anything, people of Johannesburg, South Africa? Snowpiercer and District 9 had to abandon the logic when establishing the setting, as the themes and messages were the first priority. This is the usual way. Then there's Gattaca. It never compromises the world it creates to give us an easily digestible resolution. Sure, the invalids are a thing. How large of a group, I can't really tell, but the society takes care of them. In this, I do mean that they let them clean toilets. That's something this civilization could easily perform with robots. But even the invalids need something to pass the time, I guess. Here's the best proof this world is doing great. When a group of astronauts are sent to Saturn's moon, they wear suits. A dozen rockets leave every day and they wear suits. Of course, I'm only talking about things I can actually see. Most of the events take place in Gattaca's space city, or Jude Law's home. If this movie had an infinite budget, maybe the director would have put a homeless Michael Jordan to a street corner holding a sign stating, "We'll jump to average height for food." But that's not what we see. Keeping the story contained between so few locations keeps us from asking questions we don't really want answers to. What do the usual invalids do with their lives? We don't know. Because Ethan is such an antisocial douche that he doesn't interact with his kind basically ever. Is the nature doing fine? Only contradiction we see for this is the green beach where Ethan and his brother go swimming. It looks polluted, sure, but the whole movie is tinted in green in the same manner, and kids can swim in it without getting even a visible rash. So as far as I know, nature is doing great. Let's talk about the characters and genetics. I mentioned 3 previous examples of the embryo modification gone wrong. Jude Law is suicidal, Uma Thurman's heart has issues, and Xavier Berkeley's kid has turned out not ideal. Since the movie only has time to establish the essential points of this world, there is plenty of room for everyone's own headcanon. So as a self-appointed eugenics expert, here's my reasoning for these failures. Because of the physical disappointments in my own body, I have often joked that I will tell my future kids I won't love them unless they become NBA centers. So let's make up a situation that's opposite of that. A soon-to-be father, Giannis Antetokounmpo, wants a son. He wants this son to grow to be Danny DeVito. Because he really wants It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to be rebooted. Now, how would we create a 5-foot chubby Italian by using the DNA of a 7 feet tall ripped Nigerian? Sounds like a stretch, or the opposite of stretch. Human body is complicated. It's not usually just about disabling a production of a single protein that results into shorter arms. But this is something I think the parents in the world of Gattaca started to try when the opportunity presented itself. Sure, the doctors might at first just recommend erasing the possibilities of genetic diseases. But what if my kid could have more? We see a 12-fingered pianist whose parents definitely chose this career for him. But it's hard to keep track of everything. Good thing that guy enjoyed creating music. But just like Jude Law, whose perfect body was wasted, our made-up prodigy called Danny DeVito might end up looking just as his father wanted.
I just wanna be pure.
But then he destroys his father's dreams by wanting to follow in his footsteps and make a living by playing basketball. Thus, Everything Is Always Perfect in New Philadelphia only runs for 1 season, and it doesn't matter how much glue the characters eat as they never get brain damage and the pup encounters no conflicts whatsoever. So this world isn't perfect. But we have no reason to assume it will retain its flaws. They are still doing science. Titan is about to be explored, because apparently they forgot to send Huygens there, and this is the first time anyone will see it, but it's progress. Perfecting the embryo modifications eventually is inevitable. Will the resulting world be a perfect utopia? So let's talk about our characters. Ethan is a douche. This I can say even after seeing him saving his brother from drowning twice. When we strip away everything else, the story is about a man who wants to be an astronaut. The only reason for this is that he was told he can't, and he shouldn't.
Heart disorder. 99% probability.
She's right. Here we see Ethan jogging until he needs to hide to almost die. He has no reason to go to space, other than dumb obsession. As he joins the well-suited astronauts and begins the 2-billion-mile trip when the movie ends, he might have ruined the mission by having a heart attack 10 minutes after the credits. If this story was Moby Dick, Captain Ahab would be our main character. There is no point where Ethan shows any desire of helping his fellow invalids. Everything needs to be just about him. Parents of Ernest Borgnine said same things to him. You won't be part of the elite. Same with all the other cleaners, and they all understood it was true.
When you clean the glass, Vincent, don't clean it too well.
What do you mean?
You might get ideas.
The main reason he manages to pull off his far-fetched dream is finding the weakest point in the recruitment process. That being that no one watches photographs anymore, and that the actual training is as simple as the interview was.
I reviewed your flight plan. Not one error and a million keystrokes.
That's machine's job. Only other training we see is running, which could go better. But Ethan isn't the only prick with an unnecessary obsession. Jude Law gives Ethan his identity so he would be remembered as someone who fulfilled his potential, instead of what he was, a suicidal drunk.
He suffered under a different burden, the burden of perfection.
He's proving himself to who? During the time these two spent together, they have no visitors, no other friends. And if any of Jude's close relatives sees a video from Titan, they will know this isn't the man they hoped to see. If his parents are alive, they might even make it public and ruin everything. So let's assume all his friends and family are dead. And still...
Look at it. It's silver.
So?
Jerome Morrow was never meant to be one step down on the podium.
For a genius, your prioritization is terrible. Third major character is Uma Thurman. She gets romantically involved with Ethan. This romance is somewhat underdeveloped, though after they trade secrets, it's revealed they both have heart conditions that dismisses them from the rest of the flawless populace. This shared flaw is what I assume Niccol wanted to be good enough reason for them to become attracted to each other. A cynic in me says it happens because they are the main characters and you can't have a noirish murder mystery without a fragile woman. A sci-fi enthusiast in me says it's the return from the stars fetish, where the inferior caveman becomes the ultimate fantasy of the superior woman.
Admit it, Fry, you're a slob. A dirty, filthy slob.
There is still a question of why would you film a sex scene in this manner? Is it weird for the sake of weird? Shut up, it's art. Ethan's brother isn't a terrible person. This is some sort of a rarity. This is his introduction as an adult. I know he's Ethan's brother because I'm not watching the movie for the first time. Couldn't you find an actor who was at least taller than Ethan? Anyway, he isn't as much of a prick as he could. He's there just to keep us informed about the MacGuffin that is the murder investigation. There's 20 minutes of the movie left when he's told that the murderer was Gore Vidal, who was too old to wait for next year.
Our friend here acted alone. This mission meant everything to him, didn't it? He knows that if they miss this launch window, he won't live to see the next one. And since nothing can stop the launch now, he's being very, very cooperative.
After this, he meets his brother and gets Ethan to deliver us his reasoning for basically all of his actions. Borderline self-destructive insanity.
You want to know how I did it? This is how I did it, Anton. I never saved anything for the swim back.
Then he disappears from the movie. The reason I'm concentrating to the unflattering sides of these characters is because that's what this world really seems to want. Our personalities are formed through all the little things in our brains that are wrong. World of Gattaca wants a perfect human, with no weaknesses. One weakness in the search of perfection seems to be altruism. To be the physical marvel capable of fulfilling one's potential doesn't require empathy. So is it this clear? Is a sociopath what this world wants? Maybe the final scene can give us an answer, but before that, let's go through the descent of Andrew Niccol. If I don't, this video essay will fail. When I decided to write about Gattaca, I wanted to give an interpretation that's mine. I'll only write about what I see. No director commentaries, no search for deleted scenes, no interviews or reading reviews. Maybe I did just miss some little things, like this scene where Jude needs to get upstairs fast to keep the scheme going.
Is he climbing the double helix of a DNA strand, or is it just a coincidence? I don't have the director's answer to that, but I can live with not knowing.
But I'm only smart when no one's watching or I don't talk. In Niccols' filmography, there's a drop in quality after Lord of War. Like he made a bet with Nick Cage of who can work longer without making a good movie. I thought that he just dumbed down his writing to make his stories more accessible for wider audiences and failed in that. Then, 2 weeks after I started this script, I realized a common theme among all of his work: anonymity. This took some time for me to see, but I know that many people smarter than me could have spelled it to me if I bothered to do the research. So Andrew Niccol made some movies after Gattaca. Let's go through all of them. Gattaca is about a man hiding his identity to succeed as someone else. I think we know that by now. His next script was The Truman Show, story of a man whose every move is televised without him knowing it, and his victory comes in a form of him abandoning this safe world and rather choosing to become a nobody. I missed that because my previously discussed obsession only connected The Truman Show to be a near adaptation for Time Out of Joint. Damn it, Futurama did that too. I missed that then. And it was the first episode I talked about. In Simone, Al Pacino fools the world to fall in love with a virtual actress that he creates. Whole world starts to worship this person that isn't even a person. To pull this off, he has to protect his personal life and his creation at all costs, to let no one know who is and isn't real. And it's hilarious. It works better as a straight comedy than a thought piece about celebrity worship being about our tendency to reflect attributes we want to those who manage to hide their true self from us. Then Niccol wrote The Terminal, a story inspired by a man who lived 18 years in an airport because after Iranian Revolution he had no home country and wasn't allowed into England. So he remained as a citizen of no nation. Next became Lord of War. Nick Cage makes money by selling weapons to everyone, and we are left to wonder who should be blamed for massacres and civil wars around the globe. The money that moves around during wars goes to someone who might never even see the continent they are arming. It's an easy narrative to follow and just ambiguous enough to work even if it pulls its sucker punch in the end. And there was his last good movie. After a few-year break, he returned with In Time. In it, humans have literal clocks in their hands that show them when they die. This time functions as currency, and the rich can basically live forever. So it's like Gattaca, but dumb. This world follows no logic, other than rich bad, equality good. Here's a vault that has million years in it.
Please, Lord, kill me now.
So our hero goes to give these years to the poor. Soon everyone is equal and no one even looks old, as aging stops when you turn 25 or something. Gattaca delivered an argument that you could side with either the powerful or the powerless. There was no true villain. Here's young Ethan applying for a job that's out of his reach.
Why should anybody invest all that money to train me when there are 1,000 other applicants with a far cleaner profile? If you refuse to disclose, they can always take a sample from a door handle, or a handshake, even the saliva on your application form.
Here is In Time's way of approaching the subtle ambiguity of morally grey areas.
For a few to be immortal, many must die.
This is where Niccol no longer wanted us to ask questions. Instead, he decided that he should deliver clear answers. This is what you should think. That's a double-edged sword. If the movie is nonsensical, those answers can make the result incredibly pretentious. Here, the sword has no handle, instead it has like 12 more blades. His next script was The Host. I'm not going to say anything negative about his work there. It's based on a novel by Stephanie Meyer, the author of Twilight. So of course it's not the peak performance in construction of a cohesive narrative. So you know that old saying, you can put lipstick on a turd, but what you have then is still just a really shiny pig and a really confused butcher, or something like that. So I'm not gonna watch it. Then became Good Kill. Ethan Hawke is a drone pilot that bombs terrorists in the Middle East. But are they always the good guys? Is it fair to people around the world to decide about the lives of those who they will never meet? Will our protagonist live without unbearable guilt? The answer to every one of those questions is no. It's not a bad movie. It's just really simplified version of Lord of War told again. If you watch the trailer, there's no reason to actually see the whole movie.
You ever get to, like, fly in a war?
Blew away 6 Taliban in Pakistan today. Now I'm going home to barbecue.
Especially when far superior approach to the subject came next year. The latest was Anon. Anon? It happens in a world where Clive Owen can see everything everyone's ever done ever. There is no personal information, except for Amanda Seyfried, who got away from the system and she's the happy one. This Netflix original was like a bunch of ideas that Niccol hadn't used yet. But no matter, as he happened to find this platform that doesn't understand how money works. It's like a half-assed version of The Light of Other Days, of which I discussed thoroughly in an old podcast. That 400-page book barely had time to build a world where people learn to normalize seeing everything and always being watched. So how well did Anon build its world? It's a Netflix sci-fi movie. Wanna guess? I went through these so I could answer whether Andrew Niccol is criticized too much or not enough for the drop of quality in his stories. Yes. And now it seems that the theme of anonymity is something that he attached himself early. Then it became more of a worldwide discussed issue when our information age progressed. That's why his early movies still hold up. But he didn't just dumb his movies down, the world caught up with him. Between Gattaca and Anon, we have seen the Patriot Act, internet, social media, everyone carrying smartphones, identity theft, hacking, China's social credit system, all becoming commonly understood. When his stories of anonymity were simplified, the audience's ability to digest more abstract and subtle takes on the concept went up. Andrew Niccol will always be connected to desire of anonymity, just as much as Tarantino will be connected to feet, Tom Hanks to peeing, and David Carradine to You can finish that sentence yourself. So the fact that his early stories have aged so well to be analyzed now is kind of accidental, lucky. When I said that it was after Lord of War that Niccol decided to give us answers rather than questions, it's partly true. I forced myself to go through the deleted scenes of Gattaca that were made to dumb it down. Those scenes tell us this is what you should think. Does this diminish Gattaca in any way? I'll say no, since those scenes didn't end into the final product, and I'm not going to show them to you. If the movie was saved in the editing room, that's just fine. No one judges Star Wars based on the first cut, before Brian De Palma told Lucas how the movie was nonsense. Based on what I've said thus far, this doesn't seem like that great of a movie. So let's go through the last scene. Everything has gone splendidly. It's the day of the Titan mission launch. So there's still time for one crucial mistake. I'm just going to be quiet and let this play with as little editing as I dare.
What is this?
New policy.
Well, there's a problem, Lamar.
I never did tell you about my son, did I? He's a big fan of yours.
Just remember that I was as good as any. And better than most.
He wants to apply here.
I could have gone up and back and nobody would have been the wiser.
Unfortunately, my son's not all that they promised. But then who knows what he could do. Right? For future reference, right-handed men don't hold it with their left. It's just one of those things. You don't miss your flight, Vincent.
I'm gonna cut back in here because I think copyright claim is more likely to block me for Michael Nyman's exquisite soundtrack. It's not too common for movies' emotional payoff to be punched with hope. Ethan has gotten this far because his obsession made him to be this near machine. But even in this cold world where empathy is all but dismissed in order of prioritizing the fulfillment of individual potential, there's this guy. The one human who has known of this scheme from the beginning just wants to see the underdog win. Not for the objectively greater good, simply because even this man, who's definitely been modified from birth, still has retained some humanity, altruism, empathy, whatever you want to call it. That little smirk, it's all there. Xavier Berkeley's character has subtly tried to imply to Ethan he's known this all along.
Got a beautiful piece of equipment there, Jerome. Have I ever told you that?
Only every time I'm in here.
Pay attention to your peeing. Someone might notice, but he was too subtle. It's a bit of a letdown if you wanted to think this conversation happens so often because he shamelessly adores that raw, unmodified phallus.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
The soundtrack follows Ethan to his rocket, and during this, Jude Law finishes his journey. He burns himself, so that the only memory the world will have of him was that he went to Titan. As far as anyone knows, he fulfilled his potential. Who is he proving it to? He never wanted to go to space, and no one knows him. But he's still basically programmed to either be the best or become self-destructive. This martyrdom without a cause is presented as a happy ending, as the best possible ending. As he puts on his silver medal and finally accepts not being the best, we see warm lighting. Shadow of the incinerator door bathes his face in this color that makes one feel safe. It jumps to your eyes since the color palette of this movie is mostly kept so lifeless. This tint to green, blue and flashback has created a world that's joyless, industrial, sterile. So when we are presented with this, as merciless as this world is, maybe efficient progress and selfless altruism aren't mutually exclusive.
For someone who was never meant for this world, I must confess, I'm suddenly having a hard time leaving it.
Shut up! You should be quiet now. I know it isn't the norm for first-time directors to make $36 million movie that opens with half an hour flashback and ends in 3 minutes of no talking, but there was a reason why Deckard's monologue was cut off too. And your monologue doesn't mean anything. Just let the images do the talking. Like, I love this edit. When I think of how this movie will retain its timelessness, I instantly begin to think of Theodore Sturgeon. He would have loved Gattaca. Many of his stories revolved around the themes of how the humanity isn't yet complete. Our physical forms aren't ready yet, and our morals aren't ready yet. He achieved the timeless feel in his stories by only discussing what the characters did and, more importantly, felt. The details about the surrounding world were not discussed, so they turned irrelevant. Gattaca uses this method and twists it just a little. There are very few and simple locations, and amongst the almost non-existent plot, characters only talk about what they should and shouldn't feel. I can't come up with any better way of saying it. This would be a major problem, but the ending saves it. The minimalistic production definitely helps with this. $36 million 90s dollars is a big budget. With that money you could make about 36 million $1 movies. It's a lot of money, but it's not all the money. So keeping our attention away from the world outside of Gattaca and Jude's house keeps us only invested on the characters, however human or non-human they might feel. There are things you think you want to know, but you really don't. Here's a quick example. The scene where the murderer is revealed.
Our friend here acted alone. This mission meant everything to him, didn't it? He knows that if they miss this launch window, he won't live to see the next one.
They don't mention any specific disease. Does this man just trust so completely to the expiration date that was given to him at birth? I wonder what the world would look like if that's how everyone— damn it! When it comes to science fiction stories that aim for a realistic future, those stories tend to be about some specific thing. What's Gattaca about? That's the beautiful part. It can be read as an underdog story about advantages of genetic manipulation, ethics of it, religious oppression, Randian objectivism, destiny, obsession, surveillance state, hacking, poverty, racism, evolution of pride and prejudice, and what makes a human. None of those things felt like a stretch. If you create a perfect world, it's hard to have a conflict. It's even harder to craft an ending. And decades later, audiences are still left wondering the same way. That is an achievement of epic proportions. Gattaca isn't a flawless movie. Still, I will say it's a near flawless story. But I think we learned that flawless doesn't automatically mean great. If this movie isn't an all-time classic, I can't deny that it presents a solid case for itself when its main shortcoming is also its most powerful asset. If you want to criticize the movie, the first argument for why it doesn't work is that it doesn't have relatable, likable, reasonable characters. And to that I'll say, exactly.
Your opinions may differ. Maybe you feel The Truman Show was in fact Niccol's best work. But think of that concept. If he didn't do it, at some point, someone would have. You can't say that about Gattaca. It had to come from that one very specific place. How appropriate that once again during this whole process I never showed my face. This time it wasn't because I'm lazy. It's because I'm genius. Next time, science fiction and Chinese propaganda.
In the year
If the robot can survive, they may find. In the year 25, the backwards time machine still won't have arrived. In all the world, there's only one technology, the rusty sword for practicing technology. In a future year that ends with a 20, a schlubby merman's gonna try to get chubby. He may look like a watery wind, when in fact he's a thirsty shrimp. In the year 1,000,000,500, humankind is enslaved by giraffe. Man must pay for all his misdeeds when the treetops are